From July 16th, 2019 to December 31st, 2022, I watched a film every single day. The rules were it had to be a feature, it could be a documentary, and I had to finish it in its entirety before I went to sleep. Now, some of you won't believe me, and that's completely understandable. Looking back, I don't know how I did it, but I managed to, and I'm happy I did so. It was definitely tough at times, and there were moments where I almost missed the mark, but magically, I didn't. As a disclaimer, this isn't the way to watch movies, and it's the main reason why I stopped. Doing this did give me an insight I otherwise wouldn't have had. It made me watch films that I never would have seen, and whilst it can be a fun challenge for a month or even a year, I can't recommend for people to do it for this long. But you don't have to. I did it for you, and here's what I learned. Now, I really don't know why or when I chose to do this. There was some point in the summer of 2019 where I just started watching any film I could get my hands on. I was watching everything, and I even got a movie subscription to watch stuff that wasn't readily available on other platforms. At that point, I was pretty much watching a movie for every hour of every day. There was even a day where I watched 10 films in a day. Each one was 90 minutes or so, but I can't say I'll ever do that again. You just can't enjoy films at that rate. And that's the thing. I think I got to a point where I was watching films just to watch them, which I never wanted to happen. It's hard to pinpoint when it happened, but I remember sometime at the end of 2021 saying that in 2022, if I couldn't watch a film that day, I wasn't going to. And then 1 month went past where I watched a film every day. Then the second month. And before I knew it, I was at the end of the year again, and I wasn't going to make that mistake twice. The thing is, I never actually sat down and said this is what I was going to do. It kind of just happened over time, and I almost had FOMO of what was going to happen when I stopped doing it. I'd get up and go about my day. Sometimes I'd watch a movie in the morning, sometimes at lunch, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes in the evening, but mostly just before I went to bed. It was the last thing I'd do that day, and it was kind of comforting. I really love movies, and I had the free time to watch them every single day. Unfortunately, I don't have that luxury now. But that begs the question, why did I stop? It's been a big part of my life, I've really enjoyed the journey, but the thing is, something like this really gets in the way. Apart from this YouTube thing, I also do freelance editing, filmmaking and cinematography on the side, as well as have a personal life, and sometimes I really struggled to fit a film in. I managed to, but at what cost? It was at the point where it was verging on becoming a chore, and I never wanted that. Over the past few years, there have been times where I maybe wouldn't have been able to get a film in, but I went onto Netflix, clicked on something that was 70 minutes long, played it at 1.5 times speed, and then I had my movie. It's definitely not the way to watch them, but I managed to tick it off the list. But then I started to think, if I was in the situation of the filmmakers where I'd spent months or even years making a film only for someone to come in and watch it at 1.5 times speed, or not even watch it at all and just listen to it, I'd be a bit disappointed. Sure, I got to say that I watched a film that day, but did I really? Now, that was the major reason why I stopped. But you also can't fully enjoy films when you need to watch them. I know I didn't need to, but I really didn't want to break the streak, especially after so many days. Which is why coming up to the end of last year, I knew that if on January the 1st I didn't watch something, I wouldn't feel inclined to for the rest of the year. So that's what I did. And on the day of recording this video, the 9th, I've only seen 2 films this year, Le Weekend and Before Midnight. I stopped doing this because I wanted to watch films because I wanted to watch a film. It's really that simple. I want to go back to the time where I was left in awe, and even after only 9 days, I feel like I'm already getting back into that mindset. This is the question I'd probably be most intrigued by. You watched 1,811 films, which one was the best? Well, there's no answer to that question. I watched too many incredible movies, and to pinpoint just one would be impossible. So instead, I have 11. I didn't want to include new releases in this list though, so anything from the past sort of 5 years. But a few films that I've absolutely loved from recent years are Call Me By Your Name, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Phantom Thread, Spencer, Druck, and The Rider. All of these had something different to offer, but each one took me in and didn't let me back down. Starting off the big 3 though, I need to mention the Before trilogy, the greatest film trilogy to ever grace the silver screen. Now, Linklater is my favourite director of all time. I've seen his entire filmography, his approach is incredibly unique and unlike any other filmmaker today, and his use of time is unrivaled, even by Nolan. The story of Jesse and Celine is the reason why I love cinema. It's just two people talking. We drop into their lives 3 times, hopefully 4, and that's that. It's a beautiful, if not the most beautiful love story I've ever seen, and I don't think we'll ever get anything like this ever again. Out of all of the films I've seen over the past few years, La Haine is the only one that truly left me at a loss for words. Now, that may have been helped by the fact that I watched it in a cinema, but it also has one of the most powerful stories of the 90s, and paired with some beautiful black and white cinematography, raw characters and cast, and a soundtrack that transports you to France in the 90s, it's hard to find any faults whatsoever. Now, the last film is one that I only watched recently, Tampopo. A smaller 80s film about cooking noodles, but it's somehow a western, a comedy, has more than one intense action sequence, and more than a few if you count when they're cooking. There's no doubt in my mind that anyone who watches this will have something that they absolutely love about it. Now, I don't really like talking about the worst films that I've watched. I usually try and find something that I like in everything, and there are only a handful of films over the past few years that I've rated at 2 stars or lower. However, these 3 I disliked more than anything. Keep in mind, this is all my personal opinion, and I have nothing against these directors or films, they just really weren't for me. Starting off, Richard Kelly's Southland's Tales. It was his first film after the 2001 cult classic Donnie Darko, which is utterly incredible. However, that only made this film worse. To me, it felt like a mess from the beginning to the end. The plot was everywhere, it felt very convoluted, and the only thing really saving it was a decently strong cast. To its credit though, it's a film of mixed opinions. Some people love it and some people hate it, but most people are in the middle. Sometime in 2020, I watched Replicas. Starring Keanu Reeves, like Southland Tales, it was confusing. The plot was everywhere, but it had a strong cast. However, I feel like I'm programmed to only watch Keanu in extremely action-heavy or comedy movies. Unlike Southland Tales though, it has pretty bad ratings across the board. And finally, the Black Christmas remake from 2019. It's really a shame that this is such a mess. Imogen Poots is an incredible actress, Carrie Ells makes an appearance, you have this amazing IP from a cult classic 70s horror, and you throw it away in a number of ways. It's dull, gives the killer away in the beginning, and is just disappointing, which is maybe the worst out of the 3, and at least with this film, people seem to really agree with me. Like I said, I usually don't tend to dislike films, and it was hard to pinpoint 3 that I really didn't like. It's a shame because all of these had amazing potential, but just fell so incredibly flat. I truly think that these past few years have almost been like a free film school for me. I've seen everything from Sally Gardner at a Gallop to Minions: The Rise of Gru, with each one of the films having something special to offer, even if it wasn't specifically for my age group. Before I started this, I was binging Tarantino, Nolan, Fincher, Spielberg, Scorsese, Wright, having the time of my life. These are some of the best filmmakers of all time, and they've made some of the best films of all time, and no one can change my mind about that. But when this experiment came to an end, I found myself not even thinking about those directors. Now I can't get enough from Ingmar Bergman and his dark Swedish style. Wong Kar-wai makes me feel something other directors never could. Celine Sciamma has shown me some of the most jaw-dropping films I've ever seen. Gregg Araki has expanded my mind on indie cinema. Chloe Zhao has graced us with pure realism, well, maybe not the Eternals. And then there's Jim Jarmusch, who no matter what other film I watch, I always think of something he's done. Now, I'd seen a lot of foreign and independent cinema before watching a movie every day. In fact, they were a lot of my favourite films, but my guilty pleasure always lied with Tarantino, Nolan and Fincher. I'll never stop watching their films, and they've made some of my favourite movies of all time, but I've grown to realise that sometimes I need something more from a movie, especially since I've now seen all of theirs. Going forward, there are a few things I want to do differently. I'm now not going to be watching films just to watch them, which really should have been a sign to stop back in 2021. I'm cutting back on rewatches as much as possible too. I mean, I love rewatching my favourite films, who doesn't? But I've done enough of that now, and I really just want to be watching movies that I've never seen before. And who knows? Maybe I'll find a new favourite. And the last one is that I want to watch more world cinema. I think I've done a pretty decent job over the past few years, not as good as I could have done, but it was a strong effort. This year though, I want at least 25 to 30% of all of the films I watch to be foreign language. Now that may sound like a small amount, but I also watch and log films that I've seen with other people, which I do a lot. So, In conclusion, would I recommend people do this? Kind of. Not for as long as I did it, because it does end up impacting your personal life. I'd be on holiday and feel the urge to scurry off to watch a movie just so I didn't break my streak. But I learnt more in those 3.5 years watching movies than I feel like I ever would have going to film school. Now, whilst I can't recommend for someone to watch a film every single day, as it will take over your life, I will recommend to watch at least 10 films a month. And that's 10 good films that aren't rewatches that you'll learn something from. There are tons of lists of films on Letterboxd, but try and find some for yourself too. I'll make an update to this video at some point this year. I'm thinking in 6, 9 or 12 months, just to let you know if it was worth it to break my streak. Although, spoiler alert, it definitely was. Anyway, that's it for today's video. If you liked this new style or have an idea for another video, let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!